Malignant, the new movie from James Wan, and it's easily his worst. Let's discuss.
I'm having visions.
Welcome to Maniac Movies LLC. Like, share, subscribe, whatever. So, I watched this movie. I tried watching it and I turned it off. It was just that bad. And then everyone said, "Oh wow, it gets better towards the end." I was like, "All right, fine. Well, it's free on HBO Max. Well, it didn't cost me anything." So I tried again, and I made it to the end this time. But I mean, the fact that it's not awful in the third act doesn't make it good. It's like the absence of shit in the room doesn't mean the room doesn't still stink. It's not. This is not a good movie. This is not a well shot movie. This is not a well acted movie. This is not a well written movie. Even the special effects are pretty bad, honestly. So anyway, let's start at the beginning. And heavy spoilers, obviously, if you haven't seen it. But okay, so it starts out on this building, just this massive building out in the middle of nowhere. It really reminded me of the House on Haunted Hill, only the remake from the late '90s. Only that building just looked like a miniature, but it at least looked tactile. It looked like it was there. This building really looked CG to me. And why? Why not just use a building? Buildings exist. But we go to the middle-aged female doctor talking about what we find out is Gabriel. This medical anomaly, blah blah blah, and then things are going insane outside of her office. She gets called away and has to go check on it. The lights are flickering. Everyone's freaking out. They call security to go into the hospital room, and they're out in the hallway. Security, he has this ingenious idea that he's gonna go around the door gun first, which tactically was brilliant because it just causes him to get his arm shattered, like complete compound fracture, bones sticking out the skin. So middle-aged doctor lady grabs his gun. It's like, stand aside. It's like she's Chris Hemsworth or something. Like she is. This middle-aged woman is handling shit. So she busts in and she goes to shoot, and the gun makes this sad little sound like. Oh. I was like, is it broken? Was it supposed to do that? And the doctor's like, it's like he's drinking electricity. Stand aside. And then it's speaking to us through the radio, the Sony radio. It's got a nice little Sony branding there. I'm sure they got paid for that. The Sony radio comes to life, and Gabriel starts talking through. He's like, "I'm going to kill you all," and he has the worst voice this entire movie. Gabriel's voice is just, if you went up to a non-actor and say, "Hey, do a bad guy voice," "I'm going to kill all of you." Like, it's such a lame. It's like The Simpsons. If they were doing a parody of this on The Simpsons, this would be the voice they would use. This is not like Tobin Bell and Jigsaw or something. So that's all pretty lame. And then the doctor lady steps forward, like, "I thought we could help him, but I was wrong. Let's cut the cancer out," and smash the opening titles, which are all this herky-jerky crap that would have come. This movie feels so much like it came out of the 2000s, like mid-2000s era, around like the time of The Mirrors or the first few Resident Evil movies. And this opening title sequence is almost identical to just the stuff you would see in a 2000s opening title sequence. Like, the jerky editing and the blurry, and then there's some words written and they're underlined, and then a bloody surgery, and then a skeleton, and like an x-ray. It all really reminded me of the movie Splice, which is way better than this. Splice is actually a good movie. But at this point, I'm feeling, is this going to pull back? Like, are the characters watching a movie? Because that's how this all felt. This is so startlingly bad and so different from the trailer that I was like, is this going to pull back and the main characters are going to be watching this as a cheap movie on TV and go like, "Oh, this movie's bullshit," and turn it off or something? Because that's really how it felt. It was so much worse. James Wan can make so much better movies, and I know that because every movie he's made it was better than this. Saw, Dead Silence, Death Sentence, Insidious 2, Conjuring 2, Aquaman, all were better than this. I didn't see his Fast and Furious movies. I don't do that franchise. I assume it was probably better than this, though. But yeah, it's so much worse than it has any right to be. So, then we get into the main character, Annabelle Wallis, who starred in the first Annabelle movie, the spin-off of The Conjuring. I can't imagine how she met James Wan. But it stars Annabelle Wallis, and of course her hair's dyed brunette because blondes aren't allowed to be the main characters in horror movies. Stop and think about it. It's actually really rare. But yeah, so she's coming home, and she's pregnant, and she's married to white trash dipshit who's, just hanging out, doing nothing. She's just getting home from work, and this house is huge and also very feminine. It has a lot of floral prints, which was weird. Like how is she with this guy, and how did they have this house? What does this guy do? He looks like a house painter. I can say that I was a house painter. He doesn't look like he'd be able to afford this mansion of a home, and they never really address that either. They just have a giant house. But he starts in on her because she turns off his sports, so that pisses him off. Then he starts in on her like, "You had so many miscarriages. You're breaking my heart." And then he goes to, and he's being a dick about it. And then he goes to touch her belly, and she freaks out like, "No, don't touch me!" And shoves his hands away. And his response to that is just to straight arm her ass right into the wall. She bounces her head off the plaster, hard enough to leave a crack in it. Falls to the ground, bleeding, starts screaming. He's like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry." My bad. I didn't mean to beat my pregnant wife. I get the impression this was not the first time. So he runs out. She locks the door. She goes to bed. And next thing, he's sleeping on the couch. Now, to me, it doesn't feel like a wife beater, like a woman beater would be forced to sleep on the couch. It feels like that conversation would end with him saying, "Bitch, you sleep where you want. I'm gonna get the bed." Like, so that was a little weird that he just backed down on that, but whatever. And some guys do prefer sleeping on the couch, in fairness. But so he's asleep on the couch, and then the standard James Wan stuff. The scares in this movie are all so standard and just like the same shit from 15 years. Like, again, this movie feels old. It feels dated, even though it just came out. So, you know, the shadow pops up behind him and then disappears when he looks, and then he gets attacked and it kills him in this lame ass CGI death where they obviously digitally just took his head and placed it at a 90-degree angle where it couldn't bend with a little bone. It looks so fake. This is a practical effect that has been done since the 80s. It can be done well. It can be done fairly easily. This movie is not low budget. There's no reason in the world that this effect needs to look like crap. So she comes downstairs, sees dead husband, gets chased, gets minor injuries, but not killed, and then the cops get called. So, and then a cop show that I think my parents would watch starts. Like, this feels like such a lame-o CBS procedural, like NCIS California, Seattle. This takes place in Seattle, like NCIS Seattle. So the cops who I came to think of as Detective Anime Haircut, because the main detective, the guy, he has that stylishly messy highlighted haircut that the male lead in most animes seem to have. His partner, who is every black lady cop on every movie or TV show ever. Just the whole nonsense. We gonna work this out. Like, she even does the I swear to God, she does that about halfway through the movie. She does the This is such a cliched character. Both these characters are pretty lame. The actors are fine. The acting in this movie ranges from fine to bad, but these two are fine. And they meet this girl, I think she might be more like a forensic tech, but they're both detectives. And they call her Miss Lonely Hearts because she has this unrequited love for the detective anime hair. And the girl, Miss Lonely Hearts, is a nerd. And you know she's a nerd because she has glasses. Never mind, this is a beautiful girl, but nah, she's got glasses. She couldn't get laid at last call in crotchless panties. Now yeah, glasses completely kills it. So she is all over this guy too. Like, honestly, if the genders were flipped, he would be Me Tooing her ass. But so you know, they do this whole thing where their dialogue is bad. You know, the first thing the lady cop says to him is, "It's 4 a.m. and the night's not over." Great. Then they do some low grade investigations. Like, they say he beat her. We got no forced entry, an abusive husband. That's motive and opportunity. It's like, yeah, this is a tiny pregnant woman. How the do you think she snapped his neck like a twig? Like, I don't know that I could do that to a person. And this Annabelle Wallis is not a large woman. This is not even Scarlett Johansson. Like, Scarlett Johansson's a fairly thick woman. Annabelle Wallis is a small woman. But so that was stupid. But then Annabelle Wallis, she's in the hospital. It turns out that she's estranged from her family because white trash dickhead wouldn't let her see him. So, but this really isn't reflected in the way she interacts with her sister, because her sister comes in like they're best friends, and her sister just drops everything to take care of her. And so she asks about her baby. It's like, "We're sorry, you lost the baby," and she just flips out like, "Ah, no!" no! Like, yeah, thank you for reminding me of a better movie. Kill Bill was a good film. Anyway, it's just like the scene in Kill Bill where Uma Thurman wakes up and realizes she's not pregnant anymore. But then, it goes to Detective Anime Hair. He comes in to talk to her. And she's just, like, sadly staring out the window. But she's awake. Like, clearly her eyes are open. And then the sister busts in a Disney princess dress like it's all right. And just sits down and is like, oh, hi, I'm your sister. And the cop stares at her and is like, oh, I'm sorry, I work at, like, Wally's Wonderland or some damn thing. So, I don't think they would run around in those costumes. I really don't. I've never seen that. But she's just rolling around in a big, poofy Disney princess dress. And she starts telling the cop about how, he was abusive, he wouldn't let her see, and she's had miscarried. I can't imagine why she miscarried when he's beating her while she's pregnant. She's miscarried a bunch of times. Then, and they're talking about her like she's not in the room. She's right there and awake. It was so weird watching it, because she's just standing there, like, staring out the window, but not like she's drugged or anything, just, like, pitiful, while the cop and the sister talk about her like she's not there. So she gets released from the hospital and goes home and, barricades the house, essentially, and puts in all these locks and stuff. And then she's staring out the window one night, and it does the James Wan thing, where a ghostly figure kind of is walking around outside and sort of seems to disappear, and she flips out and just starts... But she doesn't do it effectively. Like, she's running around closing the drapes on the windows and shit. Like, maybe you should secure your front door, which she didn't do, because she walks by it and it's wide the hell open. And her response to this is to close it and lock it with her inside, not outside. Someone opened that door. Unless this is one of those doors with a piss-poor latch that just kind of opens itself when the wind blows, someone had to have opened that door, so why are you barricading yourself in the house? And then she flips out, runs upstairs in this massive house, runs upstairs and goes to her bedroom and locks the door. Didn't Scream make fun of this bad decision 20-something years ago? It's always about some stupid girl that is running upstairs when she should be running out the front door. It's insulting. Like, yeah, you should be running out the front door. They're neighbors. This isn't a house in the middle of nowhere. You can see houses. So, that was pretty... And it's kind of low-key implied that she's has a history of mental illness. Like, maybe she's hallucinated before, but they don't explore that enough. Like, anywhere near enough. So, then she talks to the sister and says, I wanted to have a baby so bad because I wanted a blood connection. And she's saying this to the sister, and it seems like such a bitchy thing to do. Like, just saying this straight out to your sister, I always wanted a blood connection with someone. Like, and the sister's like, I'm right here. And she goes, oh, but I'm adopted. And the sister didn't even know this. And as soon as she says, I was adopted, it starts blaring this synth score, like one of the nightmares in Freddy Krueger is about to start, like, the score in this movie is not good, by the way. The score at the beginning was pretty damn lame, too. It was like that fake rock score that all movies in the 2000s had, like, da-da-da-da-da. It was bad, too. So, then we get reintroduced to old doctor lady, and she's even older now, because that cold open happened in the early 90s. And, old doctor lady is sitting at her desk talking about the case, and she's got books on her desk, and one of them says, I think, psychiatry maybe. One of them says genetics, and one of them says book of psychology. I mean, it's really bad art direction. They might as well have just given her a book that says, only a doctor would have this. This person is smart. I'm a doctor. Like, it was bad. And then it kind of pans through her house to this weird-ass trophy she has that says excellence. And it's just a big-ass golden spike. It's like, I think I just saw what you're going to be murdered with. And she is. So then Annabelle Wallis is walking through her house later, and she's kind of getting laundry together, and this ghostly figure just runs right in front of her. She's supposed to be alone in the house, and her response to this is nothing. And that made me start to wonder, is this a parody? Like, is this supposed to be funny? Because there are certainly parts of this movie that I was laughing at, but they really didn't feel like I was supposed to be laughing at it. And was I supposed to think she didn't see the ghost that just ran past her, like, right in front of her? It was really weird. So then she goes and is just casually loading the laundry after she saw a ghost. And then the doctor lady is screaming at her from the laundry machine, "Get out of my house!" And Annabelle Wallis jumps back and is like, "My house! I'll tell you, ghost laundry machine, my house," like a baby, like, "my toy." She literally says, "My house." and it does this cheesy ass effect. They do it a few times in the movie. It's in the trailers too, where the walls melt away. It's not good CGI. And then she's in the doctor lady's house, and she witnesses the doctor lady being murdered, and it's very clear that the killer, Gabriel, we find out, is targeting her like he wanted her. So, it's a lame death too, because it's behind a counter. So, and he does use the trophy, but weirdly he doesn't use the sharp end. He just bludgeons her to death. So that was kind of weird. Yeah, so then we get the detectives showing up to the new crime scene, because apparently there's only 2 murder detectives in all of Seattle. And Miss Lonely Hearts is there too. And Miss Lonely Hearts tells Detective Anime here, this trophy was the murder weapon, but it's broken in half. We don't have the other half. And he says, well, then we better find the other half. Or we need to find that other half. And she looks into this, don't we all? It's so lame. It's like, we interrupt your horror film for an episode of Modern Family. Don't we all need to find our other half? Oh. And again, this flirtation she has goes fucking nowhere. It impacts fucking nothing. She is such a I mean, the characters in this movie are thin anyway, but it's so weirdly irrelevant. Why is that in there? So, we go back to Annabelle Wallace, and she's asleep. And this fat old doctor, the one that said it's like he's drinking electricity, gets introduced. And he's talking to whoever on the phone about how the woman that they used to work with is dead and murdered. And he does this thing where his place has obviously been broken into, but he doesn't care. So, like, the window's wide open, there's water all over the floor. So he goes to bed, and then Annabelle Wallace wakes up. Like, she's in bed and she wakes up, sees him next to her, and her response to seeing a fat old guy sleeping next to her is more extreme than anything else that's happened in the movie. Everything else in the movie was like, oh shit. But when she sees fat old guy sleeping next to her, she just like full on. And credit to Annabelle Wallace, she is a good screamer. She has a good scream. And then the bit from the poster happens where Gabriel crawls across her and drapes his long-ass black hair in her face, and then she witnesses the fat guy's murder. And the fat guy has a window, and the view is of that Silver Cup sign, which was really cool because I love the movie Highlander. I actually did a video about Highlander. The end of that movie takes place at that Silver Cup sign. So, that's how she knows where the location is. And in fairness, the fat guy's death is at least kind of cool. I mean, Gabriel fucks him up. He just, like, stabs him in the face. Just tears the guy apart. It's mostly CGI, though, so it's still kind of weak. So, she talks to her sister, and, like, I have a psychic link with the killer. And the sister's like, really? No incredulity, no nothing. Just, like, really? And this is a very 80s horror trope, is the psychic link with the killer. Sorority House Massacre, Slumber Party Massacre 2, I think one of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, Friday the 13th 7, that's really been done. That's been done. So they go to the police precinct, which looks like a nightclub. It was a really weird location to try and call it a police precinct. And the Asian cop has told this guy, he's gone through the female doctor's files, and he found these hidden thumb drives. And he finds this little girl in them, and he's thinking, oh, hey, this might be important. So he goes to a guy and says, hey, age this picture up for me. And then later he's talking to him like, hey, did you ever age that picture up for me? He's like, isn't this a fucking app? Like, doesn't this take 2 seconds? I mean, my cousin did it back when that was a meme last year. Everyone was getting the aged up photos. But they act like it's a procedure in this. So they do that, and then they're talking to Annabelle Wallace and her sister, the 2 detectives are, the 2 main detectives. And they're going on about psychic link, and I know where the body is, and they just roll with it, and it seems to be implied that literally the only reason the cops are rolling with this stupid shit is because Detective Anime Hair wants to bang the sister. So they put like legitimate police resources into him trying to get laid, because they have a couple of uniformed cops escorting them too. But they go around the building and they find they finally find the dead body, and it's a pretty gnarly corpse anyway. So that was kind of cool, I guess. It's one of the few things in the movie I sort of liked.
It's coming from me.
And and then they get an artist rendering of the killer from Annabelle Wallace, and the black lady cop is all looks like Sloth from the Goonies. It looks nothing like Sloth from the Goonies. It literally doesn't look anything like Sloth from the Goonies. Honestly, it reminded me of the deformed kid in that horror movie that came out last year, Halloween Party, which I also liked more than this movie. But and there's this weird subplot through all of this where the killer has kidnapped some random ass tour guide from Seattle Underground, which actually sounds like it would probably be cool to do because apparently the city was rebuilt over the old city. But he kidnaps her and she's doing a tour, then she's closing up, and then she hears like scary sounds down a hallway. So she kind of walks down and hello, and she hears more sounds. So she runs, and you think she's gonna run for safety or run for the door or something, but no, she runs and then starts fiddling with this light switch, like electrical cord, trying to get it to plug in so she can turn the lights on. Why the hell did you stop to do that? Why would you stop to just fiddle with these electrical cords? Just run. So she managed to get it turned on, and then Gabriel abducts her. And when he falls out of the sky, he sounds like a cat. He sounds like an agitated cat. He's like, meow. But he grabs her, and then it just turns into this long thing where I just kept thinking, did I miss the scene where this character was introduced? Am I supposed to know who this is? Because it's so out of nowhere, and it keeps cutting back to her just tied up in Gabriel's serial killer lair, which is like any serial killer lair. He's got his badass steampunk leather trench coat up there. And it's like, I thought I recognized you from Hot Topic. And he's got the murder weapon up there. He's got the giant slow-moving fan that all serial killers seem to really dig. And he just keeps her tied up, and if she tries to escape, he throws something at her. And again, it keeps cutting back to this random. About the third time it cuts back to her, I was like, "Who is the bitch in the attic? Did I miss something?" I almost went back because it was just so weird. And she looks enough like Annabelle Wallis that it was really confusing me. It's like, is this supposed to be an old version of her? Like, are we gonna do this thing where it turns out that Gabriel kidnapped her 20 years after the movie ends or something? But anyway, so they believe Annabelle Wallis. They take the artist rendering. And she starts thinking, like, I remember, and she gets the phone call, right? And then she calls him Gabriel, and it's like, oh, I think I know something, but I don't know what I know. So she and the sister go to the mom for some information, and this is the scene in the trailer, only this is halfway through the movie. It is halfway through the movie before it reveals that Gabriel was her damn imaginary friend when she was a kid. That was a pretty big spoiler. They go and talk to the mom, and the scene where they go talk to the mom is also weird, because Annabelle Wallis comes up to the mom, and the mom's like, "Oh, sweetheart, it's so good to see you again," da, 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 and completely ignores the sister. I'm not joking, completely. The mom doesn't speak to the sister. The mom doesn't look at the sister. It's clear that the actress playing the sister is actually uncomfortable in the scene because she doesn't understand what's going on. She's like, I feel like I should have a line of dialogue here or something. Like, I could at least say, "Hey, Mom." Maybe the sister says something to the mom. Mom definitely didn't say anything to the sister. So they look at the old videotape where the Annabelle Wallis, the little girl, is arguing with Gabriel, like, "No, I can't do that, it's wrong." And apparently Gabriel was kind of whispering in her ear to hurt her mom while her mom was pregnant with a sister, which I didn't really understand why Gabriel cared so much that the sister was going to be born. But it does lead to one of the better gags in the movie where Gabriel, like, tricks Annabelle Wallis into thinking she's cutting a piece of cake for her mom. Like, "It'll be something nice for mommy to wake up and have cake." And then she, like, comes out of this trance and suddenly she's about to stab her mom in her pregnant stomach. That scene was legitimately effective. Like, credit where it's due. That was a good scene. But they go to the detective, the black lady cop, and they're telling him what they found out, and her response is, "So you're telling me the killer is your imaginary friend?" It's like, sure. And then they put her in regression therapy in her house. It's in her house, where they're giving her this regression therapy, which I thought they didn't do anymore because the memories were so unreliable, like trying to unlock repressed memories, but maybe they do. I'm not an expert on it. So they're doing that, and she kind of remembers the whole thing with Gabriel, like, talking to her and trying to get her to do things, and she comes out of it. And as and she's flipping out too, like they have to pull her out of it. And as the cops and the therapist and the sister are all kind of being ushered out of the house, the lady that's tied up in Gabriel's lair finally frees herself. And she takes like 2 steps, and this was so funny. She takes like 2 steps, then just falls the hell through the floor. And she falls through a whole room. It turns out this really was an attic. And then she falls right into Annabelle Wallis's living room. It was funny as hell. And she's just the woman's just laying there all bloody, like, eh. And Annabelle Wallis's response was priceless. She just literally does this. And just stands there and screams. Like, that is such a bizarre reaction to someone falling through your goddamn ceiling. It's like the Wicked Witch of the West just crashed through your house. And she's like, ah, like, not holy shit, what was that? Or, oh my god, are they okay? Just, ah. And I actually will give credit to Annabelle Wallis. I'm not ultra familiar with this actress. I've seen her in a few things. She is fully committed to this movie. Like, she understands the tone, the type of film she's in, and she just goes for it. This is high camp, but it's appropriate to the film, so it's actually, I would consider this to be a really good performance. Like I said, I've seen her in a few other things, and she never really impressed me. I didn't dislike her in Boss Level or The Mummy or whatever, just kind of forgettable, pretty actress. But I really liked her in this, and apparently she's on Peaky Blinders, and I really need to get around to watching that show because everyone says it's awesome. But, so they arrest Annabelle Wallis because it sure as hell looks like she was keeping some woman, random middle-aged woman, tied up in her attic. And, so they're interrogating her, and she keeps saying, no, it was Gabriel, he's setting me up. And while, they actually get a call from Gabriel while this is going on, but they still lock her up, which was kind of weird. And, they had this whole thing where Detective Anime Hair went to a crime scene that was in progress, and he gets attacked by Gabriel. And Gabriel and him have this big fight, and then Gabriel just turns tail and runs, and they do this whole long chase down a fire escape. They both fall off the fire escape at the end, which is really funny because Gabriel's doing hardcore parkour shit, like some sort of expert gymnast superhero. But then at the very end, he just loses his footing and falls flat on his side. And then Detective Anime Hair tries to jump off the fire escape too, and he at least tries to land on a trash can, but he loses his footing and also falls. It was really funny watching both of them just trip off this fire escape like graceless assholes. And I really didn't understand why Gabriel was running, because it's been established that he's kind of superhuman, and the detective is just a guy of average build. And Gabriel even kicks through a brick wall at one point, and still, he's running from Detective Anime Hair and loses fights with him twice. This is really inconsistent strength levels, but still, Detective Anime Hair had this whole long foot chase with the killer about 10 minutes before they arrested Annabelle Wallis in the movie, and in the real life it was probably a couple days before. So he knows it's not her, the physicality doesn't match. But he still is going along with the even after they talk to him on the phone, and they don't say, oh, clearly she has an accomplice, or who is your accomplice. They just arrest her anyway. Yeah, and Gabriel even says, dumb bitch didn't even know I was nesting in her house. In his really bad delivery, but it's how he says it. So, and this woman is basically an accused serial killer, but they put her into general holding. That's not how that works. That is not how that works. Major criminals do not get put in with women who are obviously arrested for prostitution. There's an obvious prostitute as soon as she gets put in the cell. Anyway, while this is going on, the sister goes back to the hospital the girl was in because she was adopted, and they tell her where she was adopted and where she was being kept and all that. So she goes back to this giant building, which is abandoned now because, of course, it is. They needed that big, spooky building at night because it's a really good idea for a small-framed, pretty 20-year-old girl to wander around an abandoned, dark building in the middle of nowhere. I used to do urban exploration. This building would be so full of junkies and homeless people. And this sequence is weird because this building also has some really top-tier security because the only thing keeping you from going in is a broken fence that she kind of just does this through. Then she wanders through the building and nothing really happens. Just she hears some creepy sounds, and she finds the shit she was looking for, the old videotapes that the doctor lady had. Again, this sequence doesn't need to be here, and really could have just been they found some tapes the doctor lady had, or the doctor lady mailed them to him before she died. But whatever. So as they finally put in these tapes, and the little girl version of Annabelle Wallis' character saying, Gabriel whispers in my ear, he tells me to do bad things. You can actually hear Gabriel, yes, in my head, and sometimes he can speak. And the way it's framed, I kept thinking, this is going to be a conjoined twin. This is sisters, right? This is going to be the De Palma film Sisters. It's going to pull back, and she's going to have a conjoined twin dangling off the side of her. No, this is more like The Dark Half. This is actually exactly like The Dark Half, the Stephen King movie. And you cannot tell me James Wan has not seen that movie. That was too big of a movie. He definitely is aware of The Dark Half. But it pans around, and she just has a goddamn monster stuck to her back. Just a full-formed, it's the size of her glued to her back. It has little arms, a little mouth that goes, holy shit. I will admit, that is way more fucked up than I thought it was going to be. But, so apparently they decided to cut this thing that they use Latin, but I looked it up, and the Latin words translate to monster tumor. That's literally what they called it. She has a monster tumor. And this is all kinds of medically impossible. So if this girl had existed, there would have been textbooks written about her. So, yeah. Not at all possible, but whatever, it's a movie. So they surgically removed it, and this did bother me. They surgically removed Gabriel from her back and the back of her head. And what they couldn't pull off of her head, because apparently she and Gabriel shared part of their brain, it would have damaged her brain, they just squeezed into her skull and sealed it. Like, oh yeah, I don't see that having any fucking medical side effects. Just jam foreign matter into someone's skull and seal it around it. And it also was like, where the hell are the scars? This would have left one gnarly ass scar on this girl's back, like, and they never addressed that. Like, and they could have easily. They could have said, "Oh, they lied to her and told her she was in a fiery car accident when she was a kid or something." Nah, just completely ignored that she would have a giant ass scar on her back from this major surgery. Whatever. And once we get that reveal, and the mother and sister are appropriately horrified to find out that this woman has had a monster attached to her back essentially, and still has its brain squeezed into her skull, which is the payoff of the getting her head banged against the wall. It apparently gave her a legit goddamn skull fracture, and the monster can kind of squeeze in and out when he wants to now. Is that while Annabelle Wallis is in general holding with all these other, and a couple of mean-ass women, one of them with an afro, looks like she'd be rolling around with Pam Grier in a 1970s blaxploitation movie, and another one with a lady mullet who looks like she'd be getting arrested for stabbing her husband with a fork on an episode of Cops, start fucking with her, and then they just start alley whipping her. Like, they get her on the ground and are kicking her, and then Gabriel takes over. And this is I actually think the movie was written from this scene out, because this scene is awesome. This actually kind of reminded me of the movie Upgrade, because Annabelle Wallis is in control of her body, and it does justify why Gabriel moved so weird and kept making those creaking noises, because Gabriel literally just uses her body like a puppet, and all the joints go in reverse because he's on the back of her head. Kind of like that effect in Bride of Reanimator, but they do a lot more with it. At the end of Bride of Reanimator, where Herbert West had sewn two people together, so faces on the front and face on the back at the same time. But the fight scene in the prison is pretty cool. Now, she kills Foxy Brown pretty quick, but Lady Mullet keeps throwing other women at her to kill. Or Gabriel, I guess I should say. And that was funny. Like, Lady Mullet's just like, "Nah, kill her, nah, kill her." And then when it finally gets Lady Mullet, this guard, who is really good at his job, just starts opening up into the cell, shoots Lady Mullet like 5 times, stands 3 inches from the bar to make sure he can get grabbed and killed too. And then Annabelle Wallis escapes. And then she gets into the police precinct, and the movie turns into the Terminator, because Gabriel is superhuman, which makes the whole fight with him and the Asian cop fucking stupid. Gabriel easily destroys an entire police precinct, and I gotta say, Gabriel isn't that cool looking, really. He looks like the killer from the House of Wax remake, the one with Paris Hilton from the mid-2000s, like just the long black hair and the big bulky coat. But regardless, Gabriel is just destroying this police precinct. Bullets don't do shit. He can jump, like, he's like Batman. He's like doing backflips and karate and ripping people apart. He shatters people's limbs like it's nothing. And the whole thing is just so over the top. And this movie is so long. It's like 2 hours. And I remember thinking, my God, when is this piece of shit gonna end? So it goes from a really cool scene in the holding cell to a really lame scene in the police precinct. And Gabriel kills Miss Lonely Hearts, the nerdy cop, forensic, whatever, like shatters both her arms. So again, no payoff for that character. Easily defeats Detective Anime Hair this time. Like, just slaps him, nothing. Fucks up Black Lady Cop 2. Doesn't kill those two because those two are main characters. And then takes off. And it's going for the mom. It turns out that the woman that he kidnapped and put in the attic was the mom all along. And the mom had put her up for adoption because she was raped and she didn't want to have an abortion, but she couldn't raise the kid. And unless I missed it, they never say who the father of this unholy abomination was. That seemed like that would have been a really interesting reveal, but I swear if they did mention it, they didn't make a big deal out of it because I missed it. But it turns out it was the mom he had kidnapped all along, and the sister figures that out, so she goes there and she sends Detective Anime Hair there. So the sister and the cop are both trying to head off Gabriel as he's going to go kill the mom in the hospital. And it did do this kind of cool thing because everything electrical glitches around Gabriel when he's walking around. As Gabriel, not as the female. And I don't remember ever getting any explanation on why that was. but it does say that Gabriel was inside Annabelle Wallis the entire time, feeding on the fetuses, and that's why she kept miscarrying. It's like pregnant women have a ton of X-rays. Nothing ever saw the monster tumor whatever. This movie sucks. But because of the electronics glitch when Gabriel's around, when he gets close, because the sister is talking to this just rent-a-cop at the hospital, and he starts going, oh, and she's, are you having a heart attack? This is my pacemaker. And then the pacemaker just explodes out of his chest. That was kind of cool. Again, I don't know why electricity has dick to do with Gabriel at all. He's just a monster tumor, but fine, whatever. He's also an X-Men, apparently. So Gabriel goes for the mom, wants to kill her, and the sister gets in the way, and it does. Anime cop shows up again and gets his ass handed to him again easily. I couldn't even tell if he was dead or not, but he's thrown anyway. And then Gabriel kills the sister, and I was shocked by that because I didn't think the sister was gonna die. But then I thought the sister really had no personality. Like, she's just Dudley Do-Right. She's just there to help. She's not funny, she's not interesting, she's not eccentric. Yeah, they didn't give this girl a personality. It's very weird. She's the second lead after Annabelle Wallis, and she had no personality. So I was like, maybe they did kill her off. But wait. Twist, Annabelle Wallis is able to gain control again, and it does the same thing around Gabriel that it did to her, where the walls melt away. And Annabelle Wallis locks Gabriel in a cage in her mind, and Gabriel's like, I'll get out. I'll find a way. And she's like, I'll be ready for you. Sequel? Nah, I don't think this movie's getting a sequel. If it does, it'll be really low budget. So, then Annabelle Wallis goes to the sister, who's still alive, because it was killing her was a part of the hallucination. And she's like, I always wanted a blood connection, but I had you all along. It's a really forced line, because you still have no blood connection because you're not blood relative. You should be saying this to the mom, if anything, because your biological mother is right there giving you a weird smile because the actress was obviously not given any direction other than you're happy that your daughter's alive, because the woman in the hospital bed is just in there, like, with this big goofy smile on her face, like all this awful shit didn't just happen. And the way Annabelle Wallis and her sister are holding each other and looking at each other in this scene, like, I always needed a blood connection, but I had you all along. It really looked like they were about to make out. Maybe I'm just a sick bastard, but it really, like, the way they were looking at each other and holding each other, I was like, well, they're not biologically related. Are they about to fuck? But they don't. They're just friends now. They reconnected, and that's it. That's the end of the movie. I thought maybe there'll be some sort of stinger at the end to kind of wrap things up a little bit better. But there's not. I skimmed through the credits. If there's a post-credit sequence or a mid-credit sequence, it's buried because I missed it. Yeah, so this is easily James Wan's worst film. Now, his worst film before this would have been Insidious 2, which was just not a great sequel. It was kind of obligatory, kind of rushed, not a lot of new ideas, but it had some cool stuff in it. The trip through the Further, isn't that what they called it in that movie? The Further, that was really cool. But this movie's just legitimately bad. I liked only a couple scenes in the whole flick. Annabelle Wallis is good. A few of the other actors are tolerable, okay. Then a lot of the acting is just bad. Most of the minor actors are really bad. Again, the cinematography isn't good. It's got this weird garish light scheme to it, and a lot of goofy camera angles that make it look like a TV show, like a pilot kind of. It doesn't feel like a theatrical film. It feels like it was made for HBO Max, and it doesn't feel at all like it was directed by James Wan. If anything, the visual style is a little bit more similar to Guillermo del Toro, but like Guillermo del Toro's worst movies, like Crimson Peak, not his best movies. So it's bad. It's got a bad score, bad dialogue. It's just not a good film. And again, it's basically just a stone cold ripoff of The Dark Half. And watch The Dark Half. The Dark Half is a really good movie. It's directed by the guy who did Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. George Romero stars Timothy Hutton and Michael Rooker. Dark Half's a good movie, and it's very similar to this. So if you thought this was okay, or just thought this was a good idea that more could be done with, go check out The Dark Half. It came out in the early 90s. It's a really good flick. This sucked. Next time I get around to doing a video, it's gonna be a biopic. It's either gonna be the John Holmes biopic Wonderland with Val Kilmer, or the Ted Bundy film from the early 2000s with Michael Riley Burke. I haven't decided which one I'm gonna do yet. Anyway, that's all I got. So